Thank you and welcome everyone today to the Thomas Edison State University, New Jersey State Library Women Professional Network. We are here today with a session focused on Thomas Edison State University, where we were, where we are now, and where we are going. We anticipate today's session will last less than an hour, and we have an overview of questions and answers, as well as questions from the audience. So if there are questions that you would like to pose now throughout the session, feel free to put them in the chat feature, and we will do our best to get to them. Some introductions. My name is Juliet Poncello. I work at Thomas Edison State University, and I am thrilled to be here as also a member of the Women's Professional Network. The Women's Professional Network is inclusive to all members of our community, library and the university. So if you're interested in joining, feel free to go onto our website and take a look at our programs, and feel free to join as part of our membership. We also are going to be hosting an additional event on May 25th at 2 o'clock with the new state librarian, Ms. Jennifer Nelson. So if you're available to do that, please put that into your calendar and be on the lookout for emails coming up. And with that, I will start with the introductions. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Meredi Hancock. She's currently serving as the 4th president of Thomas Edison State University, and she joined us in March of 2018. She is a nationally recognized leader in the administration and delivery of innovative education programs for adult students, which makes her a perfect fit as our leader. Access, success, and completion make up Hancock's educational philosophy. Through decades of meaningful interaction with non-traditional learners, she knows empirically that education is the nexus through which one's capability is harnessed for positive personal and professional growth and societal impact. And it's funny, when I do that, I do a webinar every week with prospective students, and my last slide is a picture of Dr. Hancock. I don't know if you know this or not, Dr. Hancock, but you're there at commencement in your cap and gown, and I say, this woman, she's our leader. She reminds us every day why we do the work that we do, recruiting students who will make a positive impact in their life, their family, their community, their employer. So that is what we are here to do. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Hancock. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Baum, who serves as the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Thomas Edison State University. She also has joined us within the last year, so we have 2 new leaders with our university. She brings to this role extensive experience in academic and operational leadership, with a particular focus on accreditation, student outcomes, and program development. She has served a variety of leadership roles, including president at Walden University and chancellor and chief academic officer at Argosy. She would oversee the entire academic program and delivery at each institution. And I have had the opportunity and pleasure to work with Dr. Baum on a few different committees, and it has been a pleasure. And we are definitely able to operationalize the things that we want to do at the university and move them ahead under her leadership. So thank you both for joining us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Regina.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you so much to our 2 panelists, Dr. Hancock and Dr. Baum. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here. So my first question is for Dr. Hancock to answer initially, and then I'll ask Dr. Baum the same thing. Dr. Hancock, could you tell us about your 2020? I think, you know, in January 2020, we all had a very idea of what was going to occur over the next year plus. Could you tell us professionally what were a few of your expectations in January 2020, and have those significantly changed?
If you think back to where we were in January 2020, we were coming off of a couple months of seeing the enrollment trends turn. We were in a pretty good place. We were starting to see a lot of things change that we'd been working on for a while. Enrollments had been growing for a little bit, especially in the new student categories. We'd been spending some time looking at our processes So in January in 2020, I was still thinking that we were at the start of this growth period. There was a lot of business process improvement. I think a lot of us had ideas in our mind as this is what we want to do down the road. So we know we need to upgrade our IT systems, and these are things we're putting in place. These are some iterative steps we can do. This is where we're going down the road. We know, I know he said Cynthia's been here a year. I think she's been at just over a year, because we were starting to progress with some of our retention initiatives, how we were going to find ways in our very unique model to break down student success into measurable components. So we could look at how are we increasing each component so we could increase the whole. So it was actually a pretty exciting time where we're seeing things moving. March came, and as you all will remember, I feel like, there was kind of the announcement of the day. Oh no, this is how we're going to do social distancing. This is how we're going to move. And we went through several iterations where suddenly we were focusing on how do we keep our team straight and healthy while not losing the momentum that we were building on. We quickly went from, we're going, we'll do people these days and some other people those days, and we'll try and line up so it's not too many people on the floor, to saying, okay, we're just sending everybody home. This is where we need to be. We were probably one of the fastest institutions to just accept that and say, let's just do it. I don't know if any of us thought, obviously, at the time that we would still be remote. So as we progressed with that, the interesting thing happened. We went through a phase where then they cut off state funding. So suddenly we were in this great spot, and then it was like, oh no, what do we do? A lot of money that we'd been counting on was not coming in. It was frozen, but I think most of us were smart enough to realize that thaw was not likely to happen for us. So the university in its own way really did pivot. We went remote, and while we served students remote, our systems weren't necessarily set up for all those people banging on it on the same times in different ways. At the same time, as you think of everything we were doing at work, I'm going to call like the back half, just because I think of it as like behind the curtain side of everybody's life was also changing. People were worried about their own health. They were trying to figure out what was happening with their kids. In my own world, I suddenly had my college senior at home trying to figure out how she was going to hit her requirements, which I'm not whining about, because had I had her at home at a 6th grader, I would have been much more miserable. But everybody had all this stuff going on that actually didn't show its face a lot in their commitment to Edison. Somehow the team kept things moving. They kept things rolling. We all figured out Zoom over time. And I know there were a lot of glitches, but people just kept somehow figuring it out to what we had to do. So I'm pleased to say that we actually never lost the operational or enrollment rhythm that we had. We didn't lose that momentum. We all paired up kind of saying, okay, how do we look at finances? Where do we go? We started to get some opportunities. The first federal grant that came out completely excluded Thomas Edison, and it was heartbreaking to know that our students weren't getting the funds. So we had our government community affairs folks launch into okay, what do you do? We can't have our students left behind in this federal funding again. So they went on a whole initiative there to say, we need to focus on that. The state decided they were going to have a 5th quarter, which messed us up again, because Thomas Edison's funding was about $3.50 for that 5th quarter. So we knew, okay, we still have struggles on the finance side. But luckily we were seeing we had a lot of revenue strength. Again, we hadn't lost that momentum. So we were able to make it through, and people, obviously a lot of expenses that we had before, we built a lot of efficiencies. I was talking to somebody the other day who said they haven't printed out a piece of paper in like 13 months. So we were able to benefit from a lot of operational efficiencies that were going on at the same time. And then we started to get some federal funds from federal grants. And I have to say that's where things changed for that question. So we didn't see a lot of the goals change from January, but suddenly the stuff that we thought we were doing kind of as pre-work for something that was going to come a couple years down the road was now right in front of us. So the folks who had been doing business process mapping and were thinking, how would I do this if I had a refreshed ERP? Now suddenly it was like, okay, you have a refreshed ERP coming, let's move. laptop and desktop computers. We had been thinking about that beforehand. How will we refresh these? Now it was like, okay, we're going now. So it was in some ways, I'll say for us, it wasn't a pivot. It was a sudden acceleration in a lot of the goals that suddenly, a lot of the things that we anticipated happening down the road. And all I can say is I'm so thankful for everyone in the years prior who had been thinking about it, because we never could have been responsive to these grants and we never could have met the deadlines had people not been thinking about what are we going to do as we start to invest more in ourselves? What are we going to improve? How are we going to think about things differently? So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but things didn't change too much. They sped up a lot.
Wow. Yeah. And you know, it like many people, I too have been very surprised by how certain things have gone. And it sounds like the administration is no different. Now, Dr. Baum, same question, although maybe slightly different, because it sounds like you came in like right at the beginning of the pandemic, starting a new job, and then wham. So tell us a little bit about that.
So if you keep in mind, I was only here four months when 2020 started. So my expectations were pretty simple at the time. I really wanted to get to know the people of Thomas Edison, and I wanted to try to figure out how Thomas Edison works. And if anybody can still explain that to me, I would really appreciate it. I'm still trying to figure all that out. But what I really wanted to do in 2020 was to build on what I saw as a culture of caring about students. When I got here, one of the things that impressed me the most were the staff and their commitment. And I really felt like I was hoping that I would be able to contribute to enhancing student success by building on that already very positive culture. So I think my expectations have been mostly met. I'm still learning. I haven't gotten to know people as well as I'd like. I can't pop into your offices. And on the other hand, I've gotten a glimpse into some of your lives. You know, I've seen your kids, I've seen your families. And so that's kind of cool. I mean, that's something I never would have gotten to do in another environment. And I hope that I get to continue to learn about the people and make a difference here for our students.
Dr. Baum, in your perspective, how have worldwide or national events in 2020 changed how the university operates? And do you think that many of the changes that we've seen socially, culturally, some new worldwide trends are going to be permanent?
So I'm going to do what college professors often do, and I am going to answer the question, a slightly different question. I want to talk a little more generally about the national trends in 2020 that I see and some of my hopes moving forward. And when I think about the trends, there really are three trends I will always think of when I look back on 2020: pandemic, politics, and privilege. And obviously pandemic, you know, what I see and how it's impacted people, you know, I'm trained as a psychologist, and, you know, the social isolation, the social distancing, increased stress and anxiety, what people are now called languishing, you know, that's the fuzzy thinking, the not real engagement. I mean, I think all of those things we're all dealing with to some extent. You know, I watch people. I used to be the crazy lady in the checkout line who would engage in conversations with the other people in line and with the, you know, with the checkout clerks and things. Watch people. We don't look at each other anymore. We don't make eye contact. So I'm so much looking forward to some sense of normalcy. And I wonder where we will be in terms of personal space and interpersonal relationships when this is all over, and how long it'll take us to getting back to some sense of normalcy. And I feel that way in the workplace as well as in personal lives. And I think that's one of the ways that it's going to continue to impact Thomas Edison. I mean, obviously the other pandemic related is remote work. You know, we've been very successful at it. When you look at remote work, though, you know, what we're seeing kind of nationally in terms of trend is that when people started working remotely, there was this real uptick in productivity. But now over time, we're starting to see sort of a decline. not necessarily here at Thomas Edison, but sort of across the board. So, I think there's going to be remote that's going to be here to stay. I think really the pandemic just accelerated that trend. I think that to some extent that will continue, both here and elsewhere. So more to come on that. Politics. You can't even talk about politics. You can't talk about politics because, we are so polarized. We don't listen to each other anymore. We don't tolerate differences of perspective. I've always felt like how that impacts education. Thomas Edison, I have always believed that education really is about opening people to ideas and making them tolerant of differences. So I hope that what we will continue to do at Thomas Edison is to do that, to engage people, to have them be open to ideas and open to differences. The third thing, the privilege. This year has just really cast a clear focus on the injustice inflicted on many in our society and the inequities and difficulties in access to opportunity. So I certainly hope that there's good that comes of that going forward. That I think a lot of people have an increased sense of kind of personal responsibility in addressing these issues. So I hope that what comes out of that for me personally, I think for Thomas Edison and more broadly, is that increased sense of personal responsibility to making a difference.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Hancock, do you have anything to add to that? Any trends that you think are important or significant that have come about in the last year and how those impact Thomas Edison State University?
Certainly, Dr. Baum was a tough one to follow on this one. I think 2020, as I've stated a couple times, it laid bare a lot. On the bright side, it really laid bare the resilience, the commitment that Thomas Edison has to what we do. So on the work side, that's fantastic. The idea that, our nurses were out there right away giving vaccines and they weren't vaccinated. It wasn't like they said, hey, fully vaccinate me. Let me wait the 2 weeks after my second vaccine and then I'll go out and give vaccines. Our nursing students and our nurse educators were like, sure, yeah, we'll be there. This is an opportunity to help. Everybody just stepped up time and time again. So that I think was on the bright side. Broader than Thomas Edison, it laid bare what's happened in so many different areas, what's happening in the area around inequities, what's happening in the area around race. I think 2020 laid bare a lot in so many ways. And I'm going to tie it back to Edison. Horace Mann has a saying that's taken out of context all the time, where he talks about education being the great equalizer. And I think a lot of us take that in how we think of it now. If you have a degree, you have access to other things. People with a degree are more likely to have health insurance. They're more likely to live longer. They're more likely to be in a committed relationship. They're more likely to have a retirement plan. They're more likely to have all these things that lead to a healthier environment. But what Horace Mann actually meant when he said it back in the 1850-ish was in a piece on social inequity and education. And what he really meant is to be educated. That's the equalizer. Because when you're educated, you can see things from a broader view. And one of the things I think 2020 laid bare is the value of being educated. Is the value of being educated so we can, even if we can't be in somebody else's shoes, we can see things, we can try and see things more through somebody's lens. We can be educated enough to be willing to try and accept something that we haven't personally experienced and accept there could be a different reality for different people, that we can be educated enough to realize that sometimes things, change has to be very systemic and it has to be deeper. So for me, when I look at 2020, and for all the reasons Dr. Baum said as well, it really struck me as a time, if I was committed to what we do at Edison in 2019, I am really committed to what we do at Edison in 2021. So it's really a doubling down. I think that's what it really brought to me, is we have got to not just educate people for the sake of getting degrees to create some type of economic increase or economic movement so they can check a box on an application, but also to have degrees that broaden thinking, that make people comfortable with thinking that doesn't agree with their own normal perceptions. I guess I could go on and on, but it's one full circle of the same thing, just two different ways of looking at that quote. Both are incredibly meaningful right now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both for those incredibly thoughtful answers. Dr. Hancock, I'm going to ask you one question, and Dr. Baum, I'm going to then ask you a separate question. Dr. Hancock, what recent accomplishment at Thomas Edison State University are you really, really proud of?
Wow. It's funny, we had cabinet yesterday, and I can go on and on about the things I'm proud of. I'm obviously proud of a lot of things we do, but behind the scenes, I'm proud, and everybody may not realize this, in the last pandemic funding, the American Reconstruction, whatever, I can't remember what it was called, the CARES .2, I guess. There was funding for online students in that. So there was funding for Thomas Edison online students, but across the country, there was funding for online students that had been excluded from the previous funding formulas. That was because of the work our team did and collaborating with other institutions. But that came out of government community affairs saying, we're gonna be pounding the virtual pavement in DC. And we're actually going to get national legislation changed so that these students aren't completely left out. I'm sure they're still not treated anywhere near equally, but they got significant funding to help them with the cost of COVID that they had not received in the other funding. It seems like a small thing, but when you think about that across all the online students, there are students a lot with our competitors, but they have no clue who they should be thanking for that. So to me, that always strikes me as you never know when you can change the world a bit. And I know from our own folks, when they called people to tell them there was funding, some of the people were crying. Some of the people, the idea that there was support to help them out was huge. I mentioned the work our nurses are doing. I mentioned, there's just so many things that are our IT department who could have said, you know what? No, we're going on social restriction. We're not coming in and helping any of you. But they were out there all the time saying, let us help you get set up on Zoom. Let us help you get your new computers. Let us keep working through things. And from my own experience, they never once said, for the 8th time, this is how you do that. They were always gracious. What we're doing in our academic programs, how we're looking at retention, how we're looking at student success. I don't know if I can come up with one. I think there are so many things. What we've done in financial aid, what we've done with student accounts, what we've done in the one-stop shop, what we're seeing in our new student enrollments. For our graduate students, we've blown away our 5-year goals for new grad students. I can't, for our facilities folks, keeping everything going. So we could, any day you came in, somehow things were always working. If you're not in my building, this won't make sense to you, but I've spent more time with Alex, and those in our building will know I've spent more one-on-one time with Alex than I've spent with anybody at Thomas Edison in the last year. There's just so many things that work together. And I know the stuff I don't see is people helping each other out as they're dealing with issues, because we all have, as I said, we all have that behind the scenes part of us that we're also balancing. And that support, HR scheduling appointments for folks, helping folks, work their way through, how do we get the shots? Like I said, everywhere. There's so many things going on in this university that are just really impressive.
Wonderful. And I just have a very brief plug. If anyone is at all curious about looking at the work of some of our colleagues, this past March, we did recorded interviews with 2 employees at Thomas Edison State University, Robin Walton and Alicia Malone. I highly encourage you to check those out. I personally was blown away by what they did and their descriptions of everyday work and how they worked in the pandemic. So I thought that that was really neat. And I'm happy to send people the link if they are interested in that. So I wanted to put that in. So I agree. From what I've heard, I am terribly impressed as well. And Dr. Baum, now I have a question for you. Now, you had talked a little bit about initially what it was like to come into a new job in the midst of a pandemic. Could you tell us, now that you've settled in a little bit more, if there are any program changes coming up in academic affairs, or anything new and exciting going on that we should know about?
So as Dr. Hancock can tell you, I have a 2-page list of major projects for 2021. There are 61 projects on that list. And that's above and beyond continuing to educate the students in our classrooms and maintain our processes. So they generally group in 4 areas. So without going into a lot of the specific projects, I can give you a sense of how they group. First and foremost for me is always student success. And so that's at the top of my list. And that includes probably about 20 initiatives, and things like, we're looking at our what I call barrier courses. We're looking at courses that have high drop failure withdrawal rates, working with CLT and the academic leaders and going, what gives? Why is that? Is there a challenge with the course? Do we not have enough supports for the students taking the course? Maybe it's not a 0 textbook course and students aren't buying the books. So we're doing a deep dive into 50 of our highest DFW courses this year. We are also we have hired, as you all know, a Chief Student Success Equity and Inclusion Officer who's hit the ground running. And one of the things that he's going to be doing is one project that's going to lead to heaven knows how many more, but that's student journey mapping, where we go, how well do we serve our students at all points in their life cycle with us, from the time they apply through becoming an alumni? Where can we support them better? How can we help them be more successful? And how can we remove their barriers? So more to come on that as that initiative goes forward. We're looking at mentor engagement. One of the things I heard from a lot of you early on is that our mentors sometimes need more support, encouragement to be successful in serving our students. So how do we do that within the mentor model that we have? We're assessing both our career and our mental health resources to see whether there are opportunities for us in those areas. Okay, so that's first, student success. Second is creating new pathways to degrees, also known as diversifying revenue streams, which is part of our strategic initiative. So we're doing more and more things around evaluating micro bachelors through edX for credit. We are out again promoting, and Juliet's been instrumental in this, the 3+1 with our community colleges to create a pathway where students in New Jersey can get a bachelor's degree for $23,000. So doing those kinds of things. The one that I am always very excited about is professional learning review. We are out reviewing right now a focus on not just corporate training, but apprenticeships, carpenters union, the electricians union, their apprenticeships, and we're able to offer a significant amount of credit for those kinds of experience. We do have some new programs. Cloud computing is about to get launched. It's a very needed area right now. We expect that one to do well, and we are developing it a little differently than we've done before, with a lot more focus on engagement and simulations and that sort of thing. And importantly, and this is sort of last but not least in the new program area for me, is we're revising our Masters in Educational Leadership. so that it's going to be more on trauma-informed education. So there's going to be a focus on an emphasis on cultural and identity pluralism, and certainly on equity and diversity in learning needs. Third area, I'm going to go really quickly, I promise. Quality and reputation. Middle states, reaffirmation. We have a total of 21 academic program reviews. We are initiating reviews for other student support areas. We're going to be looking at graduate learning outcomes. And we have 4 programmatic accreditations starting this year. And finally, improving infrastructure. Our team, we're all over it in the, with the ERP, but we're also doing a lot of other things around introducing a new cataloging system and quite a few things. So there's a lot, and I'm excited about all of it. And the thing that I feel best about is I feel confident that the teams that we have at Thomas Edison are going to be able to execute on these things. So 2021.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. At this point, everybody, the moderated portion of the panel is almost done. If you have questions, I'm going to invite you to start submitting them in chat. In the meantime, for Dr. Hancock, as Dr. Baum kind of partially answered this in her last answer, which blew me away if you were watching my face and saw me going, as we were talking, Dr. Hancock, what are some current educational trends that are worth paying attention to, and how is TSU planning to implement them?
Obviously, one of the things we're going to see coming out of the pandemic is a lot of people, it will have moved many people more towards online education. So I think Edison has to remain in front of that. I was on a call yesterday where somebody was talking about cementing innovation, and I argued them that you don't cement in innovation, that innovation, it's a tough customer. You always got to be pushing on it. So I think we're seeing a big movement. One, we'll see online with other folks. So we have to stay out in front of that. We have to be better than that. We have to have differences in that. We have to have a market change in that. One thing we are seeing is the skills-based acknowledgement. I think one way that industry is trying to handle some of the inequities that become, I say more to light, because they've certainly always, none of this stuff came out in 2020. It just came to light more so in 2020. So we're seeing a lot of initiatives around people looking to hire skills-based employees and not necessarily requiring the degree. So going back to my earlier comment on things that tend to trend with the degree around longevity, health insurance, retirements, et cetera, that's something Edison's going to have to be in front of. How do we acknowledge skills-based? How do we work with employers to say somebody's worthy of hiring before they have the degree, but how do we keep working them towards a degree? So for us, I think our angle is going to be a much tighter integration with industry, trying to find those industry partners that we want to be with them as they build their workforce and help them be more purposeful, because Thomas Edison, we've largely been, as most places have, kind of a student to student basis of we'll bring you forward. We're looking to be more purposeful with our partners, saying, how do you build the workforce? You want to help people get good jobs now. There's a big, the 110 initiative is a large one that we've been talking to quite a bit, where the goal is to hire 1 million Black skilled undegreed employees within 10 years into good jobs. But the next thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to move those people up, because that's a lot of people coming in. So there's going to have to be a progression. And how do we partner with them? And how do we make sure that people coming into good jobs without degrees end up with degrees, end up where they don't come across a fake ceiling? So those good jobs keep getting better and they keep moving and have an equitable and even chance as everybody else. So I'll leave it at that. I think that for us, it's going to be a lot of looking at integration with industry, and when I say industry, it could be corporate, it could be public sector. It's a broad, it could be the human services, it's a broad area. But how do we really integrate in that constant personal and organizational growth relationship.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hancock. That one initiative you were talking about, the 110 sounds really interesting. Of course, working in the library, I get to hear very little about these things. So this is all fascinating to me. Dr. Baum, did you have any significant trends you wanted to address and discuss and how they're going to influence Thomas Edison?
Yeah, I'll do a couple. I think certainly the ones that Dr. Hancock outlined are certainly front of mind. A couple of things that I've been following in the higher ed literature is, prior learning assessment is kind of starting to come into its own, but we're the leaders. So what we need to continue to do is to innovate in the way that we recognize that learning occurs outside of the classroom. And one of the reasons I feel so strongly about that is some of the literature that's coming out around prior learning assessment. And we do it in so many ways. We've got PLRs and PLAs and TSEPs and, a bunch of, and all kinds of other acronyms for the way that we evaluate prior learning. But, there was a Lumina study that showed that prior learning assessment is one of the ways that we can start to close the equity gap in education. And when you look at adult learners who have engaged in prior learning, you see completion rate improvements of 14% for Black learners, 24% for Latinx, and 25% for community college. So we have an opportunity to be accelerators in that and to help to close those equity gaps even more strongly. So I think that's a really important opportunity for us and a trend that we need to engage in. I also think that we will need to find the balance, because I still think that the degree is the coin of the realm. Even though you hear so much more about, credentials and MOOCs and micro bachelors and all those kinds of things, people are going to hit a glass ceiling in employment without the degree. That's still the coin of the realm. So we need to find the ways to balance career readiness for our adult learners with also helping them to engage, to learn all of those kind of non-specific things. If you ask employers what they're looking for, yeah, they want skills, but they also want people who can think critically, who can communicate verbally and in writing, who can work in groups. And so we need to continue to be the educational institution that creates career-ready workers for our changing workforce.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions in chat yet, so I'm going to ask both of you a question from Rachel Cooper, one of our WPN members. She pre-submitted it, and I was going to invite her to ask, but she deferred to me. So this is a two-part question, and I will let Dr. Baum answer it first. What do you think that Thomas Edison State University currently does really well and really strongly? And what is an area where you feel that we could improve?
So I think I probably may have kind of tipped my hand on that in my last answer, because I think that we are leaders in acknowledging that learning occurs outside of the classroom and being able to translate that learning into academic credit. And I think that is really can be a huge focus for us. Not counting transfer credits, last year, we awarded 300,000 credits related to various kinds of prior learning assessment. And that increases student success. It reduces it increases graduation rates, it reduces costs, it does all those kinds of things. So I think, one of the things where we can continue to develop and be a leader is in that area. And I think there was more to your question, but I will defer the rest of the response to Dr. Hancock.
So Dr. Hancock, what is an area that you feel that we as an organization could improve?
I'm sorry, repeat it. that we could.
What is an area where you feel that we need improvement, and how do we go about that?
I think we need to keep growing. That's a tough question. I think it's easier to say what we do really well. And I think that always puts you in a dangerous spot. Once you start being too confident on what you do really well, you're queuing it up to start resting on your laurels and have issues. But one of the biggest strengths I think about Thomas Edison is from the very start, we have put upended traditional education. So whether it's our starting a term every month, whether, and I know this has been a headache for some folks, but responding to the needs of some of our accelerated potential nursing students and going with 8-week semesters or 8-week courses, we turn everything on its head. One of the things I think we need to do a little bit better is we need to realize that's a strength. So we need to brag. We don't apologize for who we are. We brag on how we stayed true to this course, how we've kept adult working students at the center of our model throughout our 50 years. And we need to fight hard for what is rightfully our students. I'm on a big kick and have been since I've gotten here to get more state funding for our students, to get our students eligible for more of the state aid packages. So I know that sounds really outside looking, but internally, I think we're at a spot where we do a pretty good job. I think we're willing to question ourselves. We're willing to change. We're willing to say, how could we do that differently? How can we leverage technology so we can free ourselves to spend more time with our individual students? We're never going to have all the resources we want to do the job we want to do. So, that's always, I think all of us are, I was going to ask Cynthia, what else you got? Like put something on the academic affairs plate for a change. There's always going to be a lot of things, but if you listen to the things going on, you'll also realize there's synergies and connectivity between them all. So they're not, it's not 7 pages of discrete items. They're all feeding into each other and they're all strengthening each other. So we have a lot of synergies. I hope, I will say one thing I think we can do better internally, and it's going to take a very purposeful action, however we're organized. Dr. Baum mentioned, getting to know folks. I think we can continue to work on getting to know folks and getting into environments where we expose ourselves, because our ecosystem is so tight. And if something happens, one changes here, it's likely to impact over here, or maybe something in front of it could have made it easier. And I think that's something we want to keep working on. Also, it's always easier to bring your A game when you're really supportive of your team and feel supported by your team. So I would say that's something, not that we're bad at it, but I think it takes a very purposeful investment. And I think we need to keep investing in that. The other piece I have to say is we're focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think we need to make sure we don't make that a temporary thing that was popular in 2020 or 2021. We need to make sure that when we say we want all students to be successful, I don't mean that in the way our forefathers said all men are created equal. We need to really break it down and say, how do we make sure all of our students are successful? And as CEO, it's my interest to make sure all of our employees are successful and everybody can bring their A game and can benefit from what we have to offer. So that's the other piece. I think that's an area where I feel like you always got to keep challenging. You can always do better. And you always have to look at, what are you missing? And diversity as time goes on changes. You start realizing there's different aspects to diversity and voices that you want to bring to the table, that you want to strengthen your decision-making, strengthen your teams. So, I guess I'd leave it, on a couple areas. One, get to know each other better, make sure we really take the time out to build that strength of team. And internally, let's keep our eye on the DEI focus, not as something that's popular, but something that's really important to what we do. We're not doing a good job if we can't say, does everybody, are you designed to have everybody succeed? And sometimes that's the same success metrics. Sometimes we got to look deeper. So those are the areas I would go with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. At this point, I'm going to have Lee Clark, another member of our programs committee, read off some of the questions in chat as well.
Okay, thanks, Regina. We do have a couple questions in the chat. The first is from Maya Mendez. Have we thought about other areas to help our students with student success outside of academia? This is specific to Dr. Baum. So Dr. Baum, you had mentioned helping our students once they become alums. Is there a specific area that you had in mind?
So if we mean outside of academia, outside of the classroom, there's a lot of things that we're doing outside of the classroom to try to help our students be successful. We're looking at increasing our hours of student advising. We've already done that to some extent. We are preparing more and more 24/7 academic supports. We are in fact in the process of beginning to look at what our opportunities might be to support our students better, both on the career side and in terms of mental health services. And first we have to we're doing essentially an assessment of what we do currently and what those opportunities might be. So I can't tell you that there is a specific plan in place in those areas, but we certainly are concerned about them. You'll also see, well, I'm not going to steal Jazz's thunder. So there'll be some other changes that you'll see coming in the near future. So.
Great, thank you. I'm going to direct this next question to Dr. Hancock, but if you have anything to add, Dr. Baum, please let us know. So this is from Greta O'Keefe. Partnerships are a big part of the university, and we are always looking outside the box. What would you like to see as a new market to engage with?
I think it's a depth of the partnerships probably that we're looking at. Taking it to a different level. I would like to see us going back to that integration, the intertwined workforce development, employee development, student growth, whatever, how they all work together. So understanding how do we keep employees moving up? Organizations are stronger if they, organizations are stronger if they have a workforce that grows. They have a workforce that feels potential. And in any organization, you have some people say, hey, I like what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. You have others who want to keep moving up, but everybody wants to feel successful in what they're doing. You don't want people to be leaving your organization because there is no future. And some sense of natural turnover is good, but I give an example of the healthcare industry. And there was a group of us just on the phone with somebody who was an expert in the field of moving people up within the healthcare industry, and how identifying what people's strengths are and what might be a natural job to move them into and what type of training they may need. If we can work with corporate partners on that, or organizational partners, again, because doesn't necessarily have to be a corporate sector, how do we help them think about while they're doing that, what makes college level learning? So how are we addressing both their needs, or actually I should say all three, the organization's needs, the employees' needs, and the academic potential for the individual. So I see us really starting to look at, I want to break down the strategic and strategic partners. So Kelly, you might be sorry you asked that question in front of everybody, but it's a big focus of mine. I think we need to think outside the box on how we do that. We need to get some partners where we say we are at the table with you. And again, this could be a city, this could be a corporation, this could be a hospital. But we want to be in there with you from the beginning. And unfortunately, that takes skin in the game from the start, because if we tell them right away, we want to be in there with you from the beginning, but you have to pay us, you're not going to get it. It's got to be that investment where we say we're both in it. And in the end, we see a long run that's going to benefit. And that's somewhat the approach we're taking with the 110 initiative, is we want to be in it with you from the beginning, but everybody puts some skin in the game up front.
And if I could just add, I think a very specific example of that I come back to is we have an opportunity to be that and for a lot of organizations. So, there are employees that need to go through apprenticeships in order to fill certain jobs or do on-the-job training or whatever. The fact that we can partner with the employers and we can actually, we're in the process of looking at some grant opportunities to actually help organizations create registered apprenticeships that then would be eligible for federal and local funding that we can also work with in providing academic credit for. So I think that's a very different way of thinking about partnerships, and it's the and, I think an example of the and that Dr. Hancock was talking about.
If I could just briefly interject, everyone, it's approaching noon. Are our panelists okay to answer a couple more questions? Do you need to jump off right at noon, or are you good?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, just a reminder to everybody who needs to leave, this is being recorded. You'll have the opportunity to watch the end of the program. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
If I can add one thing on to Dr. Baum's comment too, one of the things that Dennis Devery says, and I've really already said it once and I really took heart to it, when we were meeting with an employer who said, we're frustrated because we don't have women and minorities at the top levels. And it was an employer who'd like to promote from within. And Dennis's comment was, well, if you don't have women and minorities at the top levels, your problem started way earlier in their career. And that's another piece I think that Thomas Edison wants to be a piece of the solution on. Why aren't we seeing people make it through that mid-career trajectory? I have worked a little bit with women in technology, and we're seeing a lot of women beg out of that. There used to be more of a success rate. Now women are saying that's not the career for me. So why, that's a piece I hope we get at the solution. Some of this thought leadership, and when I say thought leadership, that sounds like you get to be thoughtful and have your hands out of it. We need to have our hands in the mud with this thought leadership. That how do we help corporations realize that things that are happening perhaps for employees who are with them for 3 years impacts what they have in the leadership pipeline at 10 and 15 years. And is there something, a part in that we can play? And that goes a little bit to Dr. Baum's piece of being there early, being proactive versus reactive, and helping them think through their training, their policies, their employee development.
Great. We have one more question in the chat, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, but if you have anything else to add, I'm just going to open that up to either of you. So this question is from Emily Hopkins. How do we ensure that we are lifting up and supporting not only our marginalized students, but our staff as well?
That is a really good question. I think I will tell you, one, we work really hard on that. That's something that is a big priority within the institution. It's been a significant priority during COVID. How do we remind people that they're appreciated? How do we remind people that they're a part of this? If you're like me, and I think from all the people I talk to, the wheels, we're in this hamster cage kind of, and the wheels never stop turning on whatever you're trying to, whether you're going from one Zoom call to the next or trying to get your kids online for school, or whether, just trying to keep things moving. But I think there's a lot of ways we do that. One of which I hope everybody completed the questionnaire that the DEI Council had us complete. I know it wasn't directly toward Thomas Edison. We chose to use one that was normed nationally. But things like that help us, because sometimes even if you're trying really hard, there's a baseline that you don't know, sometimes, like I said, when you start feeling too good about what you're doing, you may be missing something and your eyes aren't open to it. So we are going to start some norming models when we can look at that. So if there are voices of people that are disenfranchised and that we aren't hearing from, we have a way to see that and get a lens into that. Because sometimes that's not the easiest to get a lens into. We are looking at opportunities. We've had a lot of talks about how do we try and give people different exposure. We're trying to get people, different exposure to different aspects of the university, trying to mix it up some. And I know folks are busy, so we have to balance that on if we call people into a search committee or something like that and say, we'd just like to expose you to this. I think those are key things, but part of it with growth, you don't know where you might want to go or what you might want to do if you've also never had exposure. So that's a bit of that, is saying, how do you know you might be interested in this other aspect if you've never been able to look at it? So I think that's an ongoing piece, and it's something we'll never have right, because our employee base is always going to turn, both in the development of our continuing employees, but also as employees come and go. And I do want to say a strong employee and a strong employer has people leave. Some people say this isn't for me, this isn't really what I signed up for, and that's okay, because we have an awfully strong mission. So, you know, you either feel a part of it or it may not be exactly what you were hoping to do. You have great opportunities for growth. That is always one of those bittersweet pieces when somebody says goodbye for something that's a great opportunity. You're thinking, well, okay, I guess maturely I have to say congratulations, but I'm a little bit sad, you know, for what that we've got a void to fill now. But you also have people who leave because they just don't feel like, they want there to be a pathway for them, but they don't feel like they see it and they don't feel like it's there. And that's where you need to work and make sure that, you know, that you're expanding and you're growing in that area. And it takes constant work. And a constant eye out and scanning the horizon at all times.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hancock. And thank you as well, Dr. Baum. I'm sorry to cut people's answers short, but it is noon. I know everybody probably wants their lunch. So at this point, I think we are going to end. Again, as just a brief reminder, we are going to have a sister program to this one. We're going to be interviewing State Librarian Jen Nelson to give the community a chance to get to know her a little bit. And we're super excited. That is going to be next month on May 25th from 2 to 3 p.m. So we're very excited to have her. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Hancock and Dr. Baum. I learned so much.
Can I give a little plug real fast for that for Jen Nelson? So she came on during, you know, we've hired several people during COVID who are my legal counsel I've met in person once. Our state librarian I've met in person once, but she came in during a very busy time, has hit the ground running. And I think it's an important relationship between Thomas Edison and the state librarian or the state library. I think we're going to see it grow in ways it hasn't. So I'd like to put a plug in for that. She's already got standing meetings with folks in the governor's office. She's bringing, for somebody who's came in virtual and hasn't been here all that long, bringing in a load of energy and vision. And I know the state library is already working so hard to help the community of libraries and pushing out funding and advocating for more funding. So I'd put a plug out there because there's some exciting things, I think, coming from our state library and the team there. I also want to put a plug out to WPN. You guys do a fantastic job of always bringing us together and giving new thoughts and new people to meet and new things to learn about. So thank you.